everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Katie, and today I'm doing my March wrap-up. I have a ton of books to talk about with you all. I finished 36 books, and I literally finished the last one last night around like 12:18 midnight. So we're going to count it towards March because why not, right? So I have a bunch of 5 and 6 star books, which I'm so excited about. All of my stats are going to be at the end of the video. That way, if you don't want to see all the stats, you don't have to. We can just talk about the books. But if you want to see page counts, star ratings, and everything, although I do talk about star ratings with the books, then stay tuned to the end. I also have to remember to talk about a book that I don't have the book cover yet because the book cover is not out yet. So hopefully I will actually remember to talk about it. Maybe I should talk about that first, but I'm not. All right. I usually start off with mainstream fiction and then go into Christian fiction. So I kind of bundle both together if you're new to my channel. So I finished 2 comics today, 1 manga and 1 comic. I finished Garfield's, I think 76th. Yeah, 76th book. That's insane that Jim Davis is still writing. But I finished Garfield's Do Not Disturb. And technically this was for my April TBR, but I finished it early because it was due at the library, so I had to. But I gave it 5 stars. I love Garfield. Just, he's goofy, he's silly. Honestly, John is like my favorite character. I love John. So I had to give it 5 stars because it's Garfield, and I love John so much. So I'm rooting that Jim Davis will do a Liz and John wedding soon because I'm like, they've been dating for like years now. We need a wedding here. So praying he's doing a wedding soon, hopefully. Okay, then I finished Spy Family of Volume 13 by, of course, I cannot read his name, but I think it's Tatsuya Endo, I believe. And I gave it 2.5 stars. Honestly, it was a great manga series starting out, but by this point, I'm just like, can we please move it along? Like, I feel like there are so many filler books because, yeah, they're popular and he wants to keep writing them, but at the same time, I'm like, nothing's happening, like we haven't, continued with the mystery or anything, so I'm just like, I'm kind of bored. Plus, some of the scenes can get pretty graphic, so I'm like, I don't know if I'm done with it or not. I don't know. Like, I want to know what happens, but like, on the other hand, I don't really care at this point. So, okay, on to middle grade books. I finished 2 and both were on my bookshelf. So I'm so happy that I got 2 middle grade books off of my shelves. So I finished Amal Unbound. I can't talk today. Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. Gave this one 5 stars. I love this one. This is about a girl named Amal, and Amal dreams of being a teacher. But something happens where she insults somebody in their town. And so kind of as, I honestly thought it was like, kind of as like a payback for that. But something else is going on with her family where she's forced to work for that man's estate. And so she's pretty much bound as a servant to this family. And there's a little bit of, I wouldn't say mafia, but like it's kind of that type of family in her country. So, but I really enjoyed this one. I loved kind of how it wrapped up at the end. I loved how like friendships were kind of integrated into the story while she was as a servant in this house, and kind of like how, seeing like servants be like, there's a new person, we don't want her here, and others are like, great, a new person, we get to have more friends here. But I did really enjoy this one, and I haven't read the sequel yet, but it is on my list. Then I read Fish in a Tree by Linda Mullally Hunt. I give this one 6 stars. I loved this one. I feel like this is a great book to represent dyslexia. And if you or someone else you know has that, I feel like you should definitely read that. So this is about a girl who has dyslexia. So she really, really struggles with reading, but she's kind of been just sliding through school, but she gets into fights with arguments with her teacher. Since she doesn't know how to read, she kind of like, is unsure about things and stuff. So she gets sent to the principal's office a lot because she can't read. But it deals with other problems that go with that. But then a new teacher comes, and she has a new teacher, and he is such an incredible role model. I loved the teacher. He was just fantastic. He was great. I loved him. I think he was a substitute teacher actually, because her teacher went on maternity leave, I believe. But yes, I loved him so much, and just the relationship between teacher and student, it was fantastic. So definitely check out Fish in a Tree. Then on to, I don't think I have any YA. Well, I do have Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I gave that one 4 stars. It was pretty good. I don't honestly remember a lot about it now since I read it early on in the month. I feel like her books are really good, but there's a lot of points of view. And if you give me more than 2 or 3 points of view, I tend to lose track a lot. And I feel like there was at least 4 or 5, maybe even more. And so I really struggled to follow the story because of that. So, but I do remember really enjoying it as I was listening to the audiobook. There was just a lot of points of view. As far as adult fiction goes, mainstream fiction, I finished American Spy by Lauren Wilkinson. This is probably my least favorite book of the month. Actually, it is, because I already put it under my least favorite. I did this for a reading vlog, and I really didn't like the story. I felt like the writing style and the narrative were a little bit off. I felt like, because she's jumping back and forth between like her past life as an American spy and then the present time where like she's writing her memoirs to her 2 sons. And so like I think like part of it was in first person, part of it was in third person. And I was just like, I just didn't really enjoy the mesh of it. And I also was it was kind of slow to me, even if it was a spy novel. It was kind of a slow spy novel. And also there is parts in it where the American spy is sent to seduce a married man. I don't believe there was anything on page. I don't believe, or if it was very, very brief. But yeah, it was just super slow, and I didn't really enjoy the narrative. Then I read Masquerade by O.O. Sangoyami, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was pretty good. I liked the cultural story. I liked how different it was. It's about a woman who is kind of, I believe she's a like a metalsmith, even though they call them like witches, but she's just a metalsmith. And she is taken from her family and said, hey, you're gonna marry the prince of whatever he is, in Timbuktu, which I thought was actually kind of cool, because I never read a novel, I don't think, set in Timbuktu, so that's pretty cool. But I did enjoy kind of like the kind of the history aspect of it, as well as the way it wrapped up was kind of interesting. I'm not going to tell you what happened, but I did find that a lot of parts were a bit slower for me. If a story is more slow, I tend to give it a lower rating, just because like I need the pace to be a little bit more, or I need to be more invested in the characters, which the characters were good, but I wasn't invested as much as I wanted to be for it. The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown, and I gave this one 3 stars. I liked the concept of it. I thought was really unique and different. I was really emotional about the characters at some points. Unfortunately, sometimes I did kind of get lost towards the end of the story. Like, I think it was just too many ideas at once wrapped up at the end, that I felt like I needed just a little bit more time to kind of slow down the ending. And there was a little bit of language in the book from what I'm remembering, but overall it was pretty good. It's about a bookseller, Cassie, and she's given a gift by a customer, and it's a book. And it's a book that lets her travel to other places as long as those other places have doors. And so I loved the concept. The concept was great. I just felt like it could have been executed a little bit better, but the idea was fantastic. The idea was there. I love the idea. Then I read The Match by Sarah Adams, which is one of her older books. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I just didn't really like the romance that much. It was just okay to me. And this is one of her earlier works, so I believe there was no spice in it from what I'm remembering, because her newer ones, like the last 3 or 4 she's written, has been quite spicy. So I'm trying to, check out her older ones. So I did read The Match, and I did pretty pretty enjoy it. So this one, there is a woman who has epilepsy and she has a service dog, and she also works for a service company. And one day she gets an email with a lot of misspelled words and stuff from a man who is looking to get a service dog for his daughter who has epilepsy. And so she goes to meet them, and the man says, I never sent you a letter, like what's going on? And then she meets his daughter, and it's just a very, very sweet story. I love the representation of epilepsy and how service dogs can help with that. I just really enjoyed that part of the story, but I just found it just an okay romance. You know, I wasn't invested in the romance or anything, but it was very, very sweet. Then I read The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I gave it 3.5 stars. There was some parts I really enjoyed, but the beginning was a little slow for me. I soft DNF'd it like last year or something, so I just quit it, and I was like, I might pick it up in the future, so I did, and I finished it, and it was pretty good. But there was like some parts where I was like, it did not need to be in that book. I felt like it kind of ruined the story a little bit, but for me, I just found it, some parts were good, because I liked kind of like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory kind of dynamic to it a little bit, but 3.5 stars, so it wasn't bad. Then I read Spies Don't Fall for Their Rival by Meg Easton, and I gave this one 4 stars. I did not like it as good as the first book in the series. This one we're following 2 different spies, and one works for, I think, the CIA, and then one works for like a private spy company. And so they're rivals, kind of hunting down for the same thing. And of course, there's like, an enemies to more. And I wasn't invested in the first half of the book because I felt like, well, I didn't really know the character's history. They were just kind of like competing against each other to try to get the information they needed. But then they were forced to work together, and it kind of developed after that. And so that's why it got 4 stars instead of 3, because I liked the last half of the book. I liked kind of their relationship and kind of seeing like, okay, how they became kind of enemies to begin with. So once the story continued on, I started enjoying it. Next, I read Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle, and I gave this one 4 stars. And this was another kind of time travel story, and I enjoyed this one more than The Book of Doors. This one was really, really good. I actually got my dad to borrow it from the library, because I'm like, I think you're going to enjoy this one. So this one is about a man who, him and his daughter are visiting his girlfriend, and something happens where the girlfriend ends up dead. And he is accused of the murder, and he gets a note saying, he finds a note like under the chair in the police station, and it says, we need you to admit that you killed the girlfriend, otherwise your daughter's in danger. And he's like, but I didn't do it, but he wants to protect his daughter. So during like this, like, it's kind of like a future world, I guess, but in this like timeline or whatever, they have a machine that can send criminals, like whatever criminals they have that are really bad, they can send them to an alternate timeline, but back during the dinosaur age. And so I really like kind of like, he was sent back there, and his daughter's trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening. And so I just found it really, really interesting. I loved how it all wrapped up. I was honestly surprised quite a few times on how things like developed. I was like, I was not expecting that. Ooh, I was not expecting that. It had a lot of surprises that I really enjoyed in that. Next is The Widow and the Highlander by Martha Keyes. This is a clean Scottish romance, and I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. I can't wait to continue the series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So this is about a woman who had a very bad marriage, and she wasn't expecting it, but her husband passed away within a year. And the husband not expecting to pass away, he wills the whole manor to her. Well, the brother wants it, and the brother's at least as bad as her husband was, or worse. So she's trying to figure out, well, I'm in charge of the manor, but like, I don't know how to work things out or anything. And then she runs into kind of like, he's like, I was going to say the farm boy, because I've had Princess Bride on the brain lately. But basically like the stable hand, but there's more to him than meets the eye, and just their relationship and kind of their friendship and how it grows to more. It's just Really, really sweet. Love the Scottish area. And yeah, I really enjoyed that one. That one was really good. All right, on to all of the Christian fiction that I read, which is, there is quite a few. So the first one, I read a book called Falling for a Devoted Cowgirl by Karen Bainey. This one was just a 3-star. It's okay romance. It's an age gap romance though. I don't think it's super age gap. Like, I think there might be like 12 years between them, maybe 15. So it wasn't like over pushing the button. But it was an age gap romance, which I don't think I've ever really read one, honestly, unless they just don't mention ages. But so this one was just okay to me. But this is about two friends who grew up together. And the male lead, Aiden, is a former Pro Bowl rider, and he's named the guardian of a 12-year-old boy. And so he's trying to figure out how to raise a 12-year-old boy. Like, who is this kid? You know, is he my son? What's going on? And so he's trying to put the pieces together because he had kind of a rough patch in the past. And so his best friend growing up, she is trying to help him through this. And I really liked kind of the single dad trope, but also like kind of how he stepped up to the plate and really, really tried hard to be a good dad to this kid. So I really enjoyed that. But it was more of a slower romance. I wasn't invested as much in the story plot, but I did like the characters. Now we can get into some of the books that I actually own physically, because we haven't talked about any physical books yet. But I started the Matthew Read thriller series by Ryan Steck. This is Fields of Fire, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I honestly thought this was going to be more stars than that, honestly, because I love a good thriller. I love a good kind of military main character. Like, I love that. But I was trying to think of a good way to put this. I didn't feel like the author put enough emotion into the characters. I felt like they were kind of flat to me. I was listening to the audio, so maybe I could have gotten more into the physical book, but I just felt like the characters were a little bit flat for me. I liked the story. Some parts were a little bit unbelievable. I don't know, especially since like all of these things were kind of connected to this one guy, Matthew Read, but I was like, you know, but I liked it enough to see if the characters develop more as the story goes. I think there's 3 books out and a 4th one coming out now, I think, something like that. But this one is about Matthew Read, and he's waiting to be deployed on a critical mission, and something happens where he misses that mission, and his entire team is. And so he's blamed for that. He's like, so he pretty much is thrown out of the army. And so he returns home to find other things that are going on at his home that kind of are connected with that. And so I did really enjoy kind of seeing the connections and stuff. There is a little bit of a romance, but it's not super heavy into the romance. But I really wasn't invested in the romance either. But I'm intrigued. I do have book 2 still, so I'm gonna continue and see if I enjoy it. If not, then it might be an on haul. I'm not sure yet. I finished book 3 in the Jocelyn Saga by Ronnie Kendig. This is my least favorite of the series so far. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I'm not honestly sure why I gave it only 3.5 stars. I'm still trying to figure that out. But we're just continuing the story of Marco, which Marco is like probably one of my favorite characters because I do enjoy his character. He was a bounty hunter turned, well, I don't want to spoil it because I don't think, but he's a bounty hunter. Let's just put it that way. But this is the 3rd book, so I can't really say anything about it, but I just found it a little bit more slower paced than the other ones. But I do love this world. I love the Jocelyn Saga. I think it's really such a fun sci-fi ride. I love the audiobooks. I don't have book 4 on audio though, because unfortunately, I think the narrator got sick and then she's trying to save up money to have him do it again, hopefully. But I do have book 5 on audio, so I just need to push through either the physical book or the ebook to get to book 5. So, but I am intrigued to continue on with the story, and I don't want to wait too long because I waited too long during book 1. I think I had to reread book 1, and I don't want to reread book 1 through 3. I'm like, I gotta hurry up and get to book 4 and 5 so I can finish off the series. But I did enjoy it, 3.5 stars, so I still really enjoyed it. Next, I finished Midnight on the Scottish Shore by Sarah Sundin. This was 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. It's not my favorite of Sarah's, but I just think because it was a little bit more slower paced. But I did really enjoy the characters. We're following, I'm not even sure how to pronounce her name. I think it's Sela, but we're following Sela, and Sela is a undercover spy for the Nazis, but like she's trying to escape Germany. So she kind of tells the Nazis, okay, I work for you, but I want to escape and get out of here. Don't tell anybody. So she escapes to the Scottish shores, and where somebody finds her, and this guy thinks she's a spy for Germany. We got to get rid of her. Like, what's going on? But then the English decide we can use her as a double agent. So it's a double agent story. I love that. I love a double agent story. There's a sweet romance. Scotland. I love Scotland. So it was really, really good. As I said, it was just a little bit more slower paced, but I did really enjoy the characters and how the story wrapped up. I mean, Sarah Sundin's endings always get me. She has such great endings. Cole and Layla Are Just Friends by Bethany Turner. This is book 2 in her Adelaide Springs series. And I really enjoy these two characters. I really like this one. It would have been 5 stars, but it did get a little bit more slower towards the end. But I really enjoyed both Cole, and as I say, I look back at the names of the characters, and the characters are part of the title. Cole and Layla have been friends pretty much their whole lives, and so they really don't have any feelings for each other. But then something happens where his grandfather, I believe, passes away, and something happens where it shatters his world. It kind of deals with his restaurant as well, and so he's trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do? So he decides to visit his other married friends in New York City, and he decides to ask her to go with him, just to kind of hang out together in New York City, and maybe he's going to move there. And she's like, he's going to move, and then that kind of deals with, maybe there's something more, because I don't want to lose him, and he doesn't want to lose her. So it's a really sweet story. I love the nods to You've Got Mail, plus a couple other, When Harry Met Sally. I can't remember what other movies are mentioned in here, but I just love kind of the nod to that. And I just love Bethany Turner. She's adorable. I love her. I love Bethany Turner. I've hung out with her a few times, and she's just the best. I get to see her again, actually, later this year. I'm so excited. Okay, now I am thrilled to announce I finished Shiloh by Lori Benton. This is the end of the duology, and I finished it. I'm so proud of myself because, as I've said, this series has been on my TBR since this book came out, which was back in 2021. So 4 years ago. And yes, so this series I've had on my bookshelf for 4 years. And I was just like, you know what? We just need to finish it. So I gave this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed the continuation. Thankfully, I did not have to go back and read the first one. I almost thought I did, but thankfully I didn't. So I can't really spoil anything for this book, as it is the second book in a series, but we're following the 2 main characters from the first book, which is Shona and Ian. I almost said Luke. I don't know why I said Luke, but Ian and Shona, and following their relationship and kind of, the aftermath of what happened in the first book. And so I really did enjoy this one. I didn't have to re-listen. I listened to the audiobook. I had to re-listen to the last 20 minutes of it because I lost track. I'm like, wait, I gotta go back. But I was doing something. I was coloring or something like that. So I was like, but I did really enjoy the characters, and I'm happy that I got to finish a book again. So I'm really excited about that. Finished a duology. I'm happy. All right, then I read Water's Break by Sophia L. Hansen. My physical copy is downstairs, but I finished it, and so I'm really, really happy that I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was going to be kind of a, I don't know, if it was going to be a Little Mermaid retelling or something. It kind of was, because these underwater mer people, they're not really mer people, they're built like us, but they have webbed feet and webbed hands, and they're allowed to go up on shore, but only a little bit at a time, because obviously they breathe water. Well, one of the water people, her sister has been missing, and so she's like, I'm gonna just go up on shore and try to find her. So she does, and she ends up getting kidnapped. And this is a pretty heartbreaking story. It has to do with slavery and just very, very big hardships with these water folk along with the land people. And I feel like there could be a sequel if the author wanted to, but I feel like it wrapped up really well. But I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It could be a little bit higher than that. But yes, it left me really emotional. Really liked the characters. So yes, it was heartbreaking, but it was also really good. I was not expecting like more of a heartbreak story. I thought it was gonna be lighthearted. I'm like, oh, it's not. It's not a lighthearted story. The Reluctant Rival by Misu Andrews. So happy that I knocked off another book off of my backlist for Misu Andrews. I love her so much. She is my adopted mama friend. I love her so much. So I finished The Reluctant Rival, which is actually a guidepost book. She's written 2, I believe. And so I finished this one, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is Leah's story from the Bible, Leah and Rachel. And so it's kind of following both of them throughout the story, but this is definitely Leah's story. So we're following Leah as she is asked by her father to deceive her husband, Jacob, because Jacob wanted to work 7 years in order to marry Rachel. Well, instead, the father says, I need to have my first daughter be married first, because back then the oldest always got married first. So he gives Leah to be his bride. Well, of course, Jacob didn't know until after the wedding night, and he's like, this isn't Rachel, what's going on? I always felt bad for Leah. It's like, Leah, I'm like, poor thing. She was always pretty much kind of like, even though she was the first wife, she kind of was treated like the second wife, because then Jacob works another 7 years to have Rachel as his wife. And so it's just so heartbreaking. But it follows their journey as Leah and Rachel kind of, in the eyes of the author, they kind of become a little bit enemies, but they're still like, they're still sisters. There's still a bond there. But they follow Jacob as he travels, to the places that God leads him, and just seeing the story unfold in fiction. And it is fiction, because we honestly, we know almost nothing about Leah and Rachel. Like, we really don't. So, it is a fictional story, but it does follow the storyline of the Bible. But I did really enjoy this one. Next, my friends are going to be so happy. I started the Blades of Akhtar series by, and I'm going to butcher her name, I know I am, Trisha Mingerink. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. But I read the first book, Blade, and I did really enjoy it. I did have a really, really bad week last week. Like, I was in such, honestly, an emotional wreck last week. And I was having the worst week of my life, honestly. Or one of the worst weeks. Just emotionally. I felt really, really off. And so it was not a good time for me to read this. I feel like it would have been 5 or 6 stars if I read it at a different time. But for now, it's 4.5. So I did still really enjoy this one. This is it's labeled as a Christian fantasy, but I feel like it's more like a Christian historical fiction. I feel like, because there's no magic in it, and I just felt like it was more like a historical fiction story. So we're following kind of like these people who are Christians, and so there's kind of the ruler of the land, etc. He's against Christianity, so they have to hide. And this bad guy has these people working for him called Blades. And they go out, of course, hunting for Christians, making sure, trying to find them. So one of the Blades, Blade number 3, ends up injured, and this Christian family takes him in and helps him. And one of the sisters in the family starts telling him stories about Daniel, and he listens to those stories. And I really loved, as one of my friends put it in her review, which I agree, I love that this one had more of they didn't change the name of God and Jesus. Like, it was there instead of like an allegory, like Chronicles of Narnia or other stories kind of like that. So I also really loved it. And yeah, I really enjoyed the characters, and I can't wait to continue the series. Next, I read Firebird by Kathy Tyers. I gave it 4.5 stars. As of right now, I honestly don't remember much about the story, so I might honestly have to re-listen to it in order to continue the series. But I did enjoy the whole sci-fi world, and I do plan on continuing the book, but as of right now, I honestly don't remember what it was about. But I did love it as I was reading it, because I gave it 4.5 stars. Next is Heart of the Glen by Jennifer Dybel. I really enjoyed this one. I loved kind of the Irish setting. And this one we're following Cirza, and Cirza starts a new job as a housemaid in a castle. Well, all the people are gone in the castle, and so she's kind of on her own. Her family's no longer living, and so she's trying to figure out, and a girl and her brother take her in, and just the sweet love story between her and the brother, and the whole like kind of tapestry weaving career. I loved learning about that in this story. I really enjoyed it. So I give this one 4.5 stars as well. Really enjoyed this one. I have reviews on most or quite a few of the books I gave 4 and 5 stars to, but I really enjoyed this one. Storm Warning by Elizabeth Goddard. I have a whole book review for this as well, but I loved this one. I loved the high action, the characters, 4.5 stars. This is about a woman who, this is the amnesia trope. So there's a woman in this story who has lost her memory from her past, that there was some kind of trauma in her past that she can't remember. And so she's kind of hiding in this village and she doesn't know why. And she gets letters saying, you better not remember or else. And so I really enjoyed it. There's a plot I didn't see coming, and I really enjoyed the characters. So I can't wait till book 2 comes out because I really enjoyed this one. A Constant Love by Tracy Peterson, also a book review on my channel. This is book 1 in the Hope of Cheyenne series, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed this one. This is my favorite in her Cheyenne kind of world series. But this one's following Micah and Charlotte, and they both lost family during a really bad blizzard. And so they're both struggling with really bad grief. And she's kind of like, her father kind of had a prearranged marriage agreement with some pretty awful guy in town, and she's like, I'm not marrying you. Like, my father's gone now. Like, I'm not going to agree to that. So, but he wants the money. So he's all over that. But I just really loved it. I loved our 2 main characters, Micah and Charlotte, how they were friends to more. And I just really love that storyline. And my name's in this book, so you can't get better than that, because obviously, you know, Tracy's such an amazing, I love Anne Tracy Peterson, so love her so much. All right, then The Right Kind of Fool by Sarah Loudon Thomas. I gave this author a second chance because the other book that I read by her, I only gave like 3 stars to. It was okay, but I wasn't a fan of it. This one, on the other hand, got 5 stars. I love this book. So we're following a 13-year-old kid named Loyal, and Loyal is deaf, and he discovers a dead body in the woods one day, and his father is closer by. So he decides, I'm going to go visit my father, because the mother and father kind of split up after they found out their son was deaf. So the father lives up in the mountains. So he goes to his dad and he's trying to tell him there's a dead body in the woods. And so just the relationship and bond between father and son kind of growing, and them kind of learning from each other. I love that. And I feel like anybody would really enjoy this story. I loved it. Really, really good. An Overdue Match by Sarah Monson. I'm trying to go through the last couple quickly because I have an appointment I have to get to. But An Overdue Match, this is book 1 in Checking Out Love. I have a review on this one as well. But I really like this one because we're following a girl named Evangeline, and I can never pronounce what she has, but she has some kind of, it's not endangering her life or anything, but she has no hair on her entire body. And so she wears wigs, she wears, tattoos for her eyebrows and stuff. Well, she works at a library, and something happens where a guy who is a tattoo artist returns a book that is damaged, and she's like, excuse me, mister, what are you doing with my books? Not knowing, what's happening with the tattoo artist. I loved the tattoo artist. I thought he was great. And I've never seen a tattoo artist in a Christian fiction book before. So I thought it was kind of fun. But I loved kind of their kind of enemies to friends to more story. It was just really, really sweet. I love this one. I gave it 5 stars. Really, really great story. Her Darkest Secret and A Cry in the Dark by Jessica R. Patch. Both 5 stars. Excellent. If you love high action, kind of more on the creepy, gruesome side of the FBI kind of units, I would highly suggest these. If you like Criminal Minds, you will really enjoy these books. I don't think they're that gruesome though, just a little bit, like, I was gonna say think Jamie Jo Wright, but if Jamie Jo Wright wrote FBI, kind of like that. But I loved both of these. Very intense, loved the characters. I was going to finish the entire trilogy, but I ran out of borrows on my Hoopla app, so had to wait till this month. But I will be finishing up the trilogy this month. But I enjoyed both. They were both fantastic. Then I read Fragile Designs by Colleen Coble for my Patreon book club. They picked books for me, and this one got picked randomly. So I read it. Oh my goodness, 5 stars. Fabergé egg mystery going on. A mystery of family secrets in the past. I loved it. I love the characters. It's a uh, single mom trope, I guess you would say, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, I love Fabergé egg history. I think it's fantastic. You have to read that one. And it's a standalone, so that's great because she writes a lot of series. The Novel Adventures of Natalie Daughtry by Susan L. Tuttle. This is book 2 in the Treasures of Halstead Manor. If you love Charlie's Angels, you will love this series. Book 2 is my favorite so far. I give this one 5 stars. Honestly, could be 6. I loved this one. We're following a married couple in this one, actually, and they've been having quite a bit of marriage problem issues. But then her husband decides to follow her on one of her cases because he's like, this mysterious stranger calls you up on the phone, like Charlie from Charlie's Angels, and tells you to go on a mystery case. Like, it's pretty sketch. So he decides to follow her, and they kind of re-fall back into love. And I just love that. And this one also had kind of like a book about a book as well, because we're following kind of the mysteries involving books, and that was just fantastic. You have to read this one. It's so good. Mercy's Reign by Cindy K. Sproul's. This one wrecked me. Honestly, read the trigger warnings for this book because it will tear you apart. If you can't deal with physical abuse with family members or kind of more like a church cult type feel, I would suggest skipping this book. It's very heartbreaking. The author does, though, a fantastic job, but boy, does it break your heart. This was 6 stars for me. I loved it so much. So in this one, we're following Mercy, and she has spent her life under the authority of her abusive father, very abusive father. And man, look up the trigger warnings. It's bad. But something happens where she's kicked out of her home by her grieving mother, and now she finds her way somewhere to the side of the mountain where she's learning the difference between real faith with Jesus and the fake faith that her family had. And just, it's so good. It's so good. You have to read it. Then the last 2 books that I have, which were my 2 favorites, although that one be a favorite too, Within These Walls of Sorrow by Amanda Barrett. My mom has my copy downstairs because she's reading it, but thoroughly enjoyed it. It was my Patreon book club pick for this month. We got to talk with the authors. Amazing. I love Amanda Barrett, but this was such a phenomenal story. World War II about 2 women, one who is of Polish descent and one of Jewish descent. So we get to see both sides of history happening. And the woman, Zoza, who is of Polish descent, she decides once the Jewish ghetto goes up in Poland, she decides she wants to work for the pharmacy that's actually in the ghetto, run by a Polish man. And so she gets a job there, and she gets firsthand experience of what happens in those ghettos. And then Hania is of Jewish descent, and man, she goes through so much from being forced into the ghetto and then into the concentration camps, and it's just so heartbreaking. There's some scenes that are fairly graphic, but I felt like Amanda Barrett did such a great job at bringing it to light while also honoring the people that went through it. And I can't recommend that book enough. It's so good. Honestly, any of her books are fantastic. Then the last one, which I really struggled to pick a favorite this month, but I decided to give this one the first spot, and that is Mark of the King by Jocelyn Green. This one was fantastic. We're following a woman who is a midwife in training, and something happens where one of her patients dies, and she's accused of murder, and so she's marked by the king as a murderer, and so she's put into prison. And something happens where they're looking for colonists to colonize America. And so she talks the nuns where she is in the jail to go. But then as she's leaving to go to America, she's tasked to find a husband. They're lined up and say, you got like 10 seconds to pick one of the men from the men's jail to be your husband. So she's kind of bonded with one of the men in the line, and so they both go to America, and it was a heartbreaking story, but there was some hope in it. There was a little bit of mystery going on. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought it was fantastic. Hey guys, editing Katie here because I forgot to update you on 2 things in this video. One, my DNFs for this month, the books that I quit. I ended up quitting a buddy read. I was reading Keepsake Crimes by Laura Childs with my friend Amy Marie, and it just wasn't for me. It was pretty slow paced, and I was not a fan of the New Orleans setting. So I was like, it's just not for me, so I'm just gonna quit that one. And then the other one that I quit was actually for a reading vlog, and that was The Spy by Paulo Coelho. This one, there was a pretty graphic scene about a woman getting hurt, I think in school or something, physically. And so I was like, probably not a good book to read. So I was like, I was done with it. Plus, it was also pretty dry as well. So those are the two books that I DNF'd, which I knew I was going to forget to talk about the book that I did not have a book cover for. And if I waited, we would have had a book cover. No, we wouldn't have actually, because I think it was only like a email exclusive through Jamie Jo Wright's email list. But Jamie Jo Wright shared Pepper Basham's newest book cover, and it's great if you are a Jamie Jo Wright newsletter subscriber. Go check it out because she's sharing Pepper Basham's cover and it's the cutest thing. So I did end up reading Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham. It's her new Regency romance, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. It's such a sweet romance. I can't really tell you too much about it because, well, let me see if it's on Goodreads. Well, I know it is on Goodreads, but like the description and stuff, I'm not sure because I want to make sure that I'm allowed to talk about it because I am one of her like very, very early beta readers. And so I'm like, I better double check to make sure there's actually a description about it. Okay, there is. But it's a clean Regency rom-com and is just the most cutest thing. So it's about a girl who's had 2 failed social seasons, and she's hoping that the 3rd time's a charm. She found a perfect match in a guy named Simon. Well, Simon decides, hey, I'm not gonna marry you. So it's kind of like it's a second chance Regency romance, but I don't know. I like second chance romances, but I love this one. And I feel like Pepper Basham does a great job at just really having a fun time with the second chance romance. The kissing scenes are swoon-worthy, and there is a nod to Mr. Darcy coming out of the pond. So yes, I cannot wait for you guys to see it or read it. And I think it comes out in fall, but don't quote me. But I can't wait for you guys to read it because it was great. So those are the updates, and now back to the original video. I had a lot of really great books this month. All right, on for statistics now, really quickly. So 36 books, 11,790 pages, 11 from my own shelf, which is amazing, 3 NetGalley, 9 review books, which I probably owned most of those too, and then 13 from my library. I had 1 2-star, 1 2.5 star, 3 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 8 4 stars, 5 4.5 stars, 9 5 stars, and 5 6 stars. So it was a phenomenal month. 1 2-star, but that's okay. Then I read 2 physical books. I read 5 ebooks. And then I read, I believe, 29 audiobooks, if that totals correctly. But yes, so a lot of audiobooks. That's why I read so much this month. Otherwise, total would have been closer to 15. All right, then as far as genres go, I read 3 sci-fi, 2 romantic suspense, 3 fantasy, 5 contemporary romance, 12 historical fiction / historical romances, 4 contemporary books, 4 romantic suspense, 1 manga, 1 comic book, and 1 biblical fiction. So that is everything. So sorry I had to rush a little bit at the ending, but I have to go to an appointment now. So lots of great books. I'll hold up a few. I don't have all of them, but at least I have some of them, so you guys can see some of the books that I read this month. So let me know what your favorite book was that you read this month. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all in the next video.